Woman gave her only bed to a scarred Apache warrior. Weeks later, their camp filled her field. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. In the heart of the Wild West, amidst the rugged hills and vast plains, lived a woman named Eliza. Her life had been one of solitude and simplicity, managing a small ranch that had been passed down through generations of her family. Despite the beauty of the land, there was little to show for it except her hard work and determination. Her house, a modest wooden cabin, sat alone on the edge of a small valley, where the cold winds of the mountains often blew harshly across the plains. She had few visitors, as the area was far removed from any town, and the land was not fertile enough to attract settlers. The townsfolk often spoke of the dangers of living so far from civilization, but Eliza was not afraid. Her past had taught her the value of independence, and she embraced it fully. One winter evening, as the sky darkened and a snowstorm began to roll in, Eliza heard a knock at her door. She hadn't expected any visitors, especially not in such a storm. When she opened it, she was met by a man, a stranger, with rugged clothes soaked by the snow. His face was hidden beneath a weathered hat, but his piercing eyes told a story of hardship and pain. The man staggered, barely able to stand on his own, and when he spoke, his voice was hoarse. "Please," he said, his breath coming in ragged gasps, "I need shelter. I can't make it any farther in this storm." Eliza hesitated, her eyes scanning the man's form. His clothes were torn, and blood stained his shirt, but it was the deep scars on his face that caught her attention. He appeared to have been through a brutal fight, perhaps a battle with nature or men. Her heart softened at the sight of him, and without a second thought, she stepped aside. "Come in," she said, her voice steady despite the storm's howling winds outside. She led him inside, offering him warmth and the only bed in her small cabin. The man thanked her, but his gratitude was evident in his weary eyes more than his words. Eliza went to work, making a fire and offering him water. Despite the silence between them, she could feel a connection, an unspoken understanding between two people who, though strangers, both knew the weight of survival. The night passed slowly. The man fell into a deep sleep, his breathing steadying as Eliza sat by the fire, watching over him. She wondered about his past, who he was, and why he had ended up in such a dire state. But in her isolation, it didn't matter. What mattered was that she had done something good, even if it was just offering a bed to a wounded soul. The storm raged on outside, but inside the cabin, a strange peace had settled. The next morning, Eliza woke to find the man gone. His bed was empty, but the faintest trace of snow had melted by the fireplace. He had left without a word, and for a moment, she wondered if it had all been a dream. But when she opened the door to the outside world, she saw something that would change her life forever. Across the snow-covered field, a group of Apache warriors had set up camp. They were gathered in perfect formation, their horses tied to posts, and their eyes all fixed on her cabin. Eliza stood frozen, her heart pounding in her chest. She knew, without a doubt, that they were here for a reason. Her breath caught in her throat as the man she had helped appeared among them, his face now adorned with a symbol of leadership. What was this strange turn of events? Why had the camp of warriors filled her field, and what would become of her small, quiet life now that their presence had forever altered it? I stood in the doorway, the cold wind biting at my skin, my heart pounding in my chest. The warriors had set up camp across my field, their presence as imposing as it was unexpected. The man I had helped, the one who had entered my home injured, and without a word, stood among them, his face now adorned with symbols of leadership. His eyes met mine, and for a brief moment, I felt a sense of recognition. But there was no time for questions, no time for hesitation. I stepped out into the cold morning air, my feet crunching on the snow-covered ground. The warriors watched me closely, their expressions unreadable. I had no idea what they wanted or why they had come, but something deep inside me told me that this was only the beginning of something much larger than I could have imagined. As I walked towards them, My mind raced. What was I supposed to do? Why were they here? My thoughts were interrupted by the man's voice, calm but firm. "You are the one who helped me," he said, his words cutting through the chill air. "And now we are here to help you." His words echoed in my ears, but they made little sense. The group of warriors, all dressed in traditional Apache attire, stood in perfect formation, their eyes locked on me as I approached. I could feel the weight of their gaze, but I didn't let it falter. Instead, I raised my head high, determined to show them that I was not afraid. The man stepped forward, his movements graceful and measured. "I am Takoda, leader of the Redstone Apache," he said, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had seen much in his life. "You saved my life, and for that, you have our gratitude." Gratitude? My mind spun. What had I done to deserve their gratitude? I had simply given him a place to rest, a bed to sleep in. It seemed impossible that my small act of kindness could have such a profound impact. But as I looked into Takoda's eyes, I saw something there, something deeper than just a simple thank you. I saw respect, and something more, something that I couldn't quite place. As he spoke, his words seemed to carry more weight. "We have come to protect you, to offer you our help. Your land is in danger, and we will not allow anyone to take what is yours." His words sent a shiver down my spine. My land, my small ranch, the one I had worked so hard to maintain, the one that had been passed down through generations? Who would want to take it from me? I opened my mouth to speak, but the words caught in my throat. Before I could respond, Takoda's gaze shifted, and he nodded toward the rest of the warriors. Without a word, they began to move, setting up their camp around me, their actions swift and purposeful. They had come to protect me, but I couldn't understand why they were doing it. As the day wore on, more and more warriors arrived, their numbers growing by the hour. They filled my field, their horses grazing peacefully in the snow, their voices low but full of determination. I felt a strange mixture of gratitude and fear. The warriors, though they had shown me nothing but kindness, were still a reminder of the world I didn't fully understand, a world of power, strength, and loyalty that was far beyond anything I had ever known. By the time the sun began to set, my field was filled with warriors, their presence almost overwhelming. But there was one thing I knew for certain. I was no longer alone. The winds of change had come, and with them, the promise of something far greater than I had ever imagined. As night fell and the warriors settled into their camp, I couldn't help but wonder what the future would hold. Would their protection be enough? What did they want from me in return? And most importantly, why had they chosen me? These were questions I would have to face in the days to come. But for now, I stood in the center of my field, watching the warriors settle in for the night, knowing that my life had changed forever. My small act of kindness had brought these warriors to my doorstep, and I could only hope that the miracle they promised would be enough to protect me from whatever lay ahead. I stood in the center of my field, the sound of hooves echoing in the distance as more warriors arrived, their presence growing with each passing hour. The sight was overwhelming. Apache warriors of all ages and backgrounds, setting up their camp around me with precision and purpose. As the days passed, my small ranch had transformed into something far beyond what I had ever imagined. It was no longer just my land. It had become a fortress, a place where power, strength, and honor were intertwined in ways I couldn't fully comprehend. I had done nothing more than offer a place to sleep to. A wounded man, but now my quiet, isolated life was being invaded by the Redstone Apache, a tribe that commanded respect and instilled fear in equal measure. Each day, they would gather in groups, speaking in their native tongue, the rhythm of their conversations like a song that seemed both ancient and timeless. Their presence was a constant reminder of the world I had never known, a world of warriors and leaders, of traditions that went back generations. But it was Takoda, the leader of the tribe, who had become the focus of my attention. Since the day he had spoken those words, "We have come to help you," I had watched him closely. He was a man of few words, but there was a quiet strength in him that drew people in. He commanded his warriors with a steady hand, and they followed him without question. His scars, much like the ones on the man I had helped, spoke of battles fought and lost, but there was more to him than just a warrior. He was a leader, and his eyes held a depth that I couldn't quite place. One evening, as the sun began to set and the warriors settled into their camp, I found myself walking towards him. The snow-covered ground crunched beneath my boots, and the cold air stung my cheeks, but I didn't mind. I had questions that had been burning in my mind since the warriors first arrived. When I reached Takoda's tent, he was sitting by a small fire, the flickering flames casting shadows on his face. He looked up as I approached, his expression unreadable. "You are troubled," he said, his voice soft but firm. "What is on your mind, Eliza?" His words surprised me. How did he know? I hadn't said anything, but it seemed as though he could sense my unease. "Why are you here?" I asked, my voice shaking slightly despite my best efforts to remain composed. "Why did you come to my land?" Takoda's gaze softened, and for a moment, he said nothing. He simply looked at me, as if weighing his words carefully. Then he spoke. "You saved my life," he said quietly. "And for that, you have earned our respect. But it is more than that. Your kindness has not gone unnoticed. We are here because you have given us something that many have forgotten, the spirit of compassion, the willingness to help even those who are different. In return, we offer you our protection." His words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. I had never thought of my small act of kindness as something that could change the course of my life, let alone the lives of others. But as Takoda spoke, I realized that there was more to this than just a simple exchange of favors. He was right. In a world where survival was often the most important thing, where the land itself was unforgiving, the willingness to show kindness, to extend a hand to those in need, had become a rare and precious thing. And now, because of that kindness, my life was forever intertwined with the fate of the Redstone Apache. As Takoda finished speaking, he rose to his feet, his towering figure casting a long shadow in the firelight. "You will never be alone again, Eliza," he said. "We will protect this land, and we will protect you." I stood there, silent, trying to process the weight of his words. What had started as a simple act of compassion had become something far greater, something that would change not only my future but the future of those around me. And as the wind howled through the trees and the camp settled for the night, I knew that the world I had once known was gone. In its place was a new world, one where strength, honor, and kindness were no longer separate, but together. And it was in this new world that I would learn what it truly meant to be part of something greater than myself. Could hear the faint laughter of the young warriors as they worked together, and I saw the elder women tending to the small campfires, preparing food and tea for everyone. The smell of roasting meat and fresh bread filled the air, a stark contrast to the quiet emptiness I had once known. I walked toward the center of the camp, my feet crunching on the snow-covered ground, and found Takoda standing near the fire. He was speaking with several of his warriors, their expressions serious but calm. As I approached, he turned and greeted me with a nod. "Eliza," he said, his voice as steady as always. "Today, we prepare for what comes next. There are those who would seek to harm this land, and we will not allow that." I nodded, feeling a sense of responsibility I had never known before. Takoda had promised me protection, but now I realized it wasn't just a promise, it was a bond. His warriors were not simply a shield against danger, they were a family, a community bound together by their shared purpose. "What do we do now?" I asked, my voice low but steady. Takoda studied me for a moment, as if weighing my words. "Now, we stand together," he replied. "The land you tend to is not just yours anymore. It belongs to all of us, and we will defend it as if it were our own." His words settled into my mind like seeds in fertile soil. This wasn't just about a single act of kindness. It was about something larger, something that had the power to change everything. I spent the rest of the morning moving through the camp, learning the ways of the Apache warriors. I spoke with some of the women, who taught me how to prepare the herbs and medicine they used to heal wounds and soothe pain. Others showed me how to work with the horses, their movements graceful and powerful as they cared for the animals with a deep, almost spiritual understanding. I was learning more in these few days than I had in a lifetime of solitude. But as the sun began to set and the firelight danced across the faces of the warriors, I felt something shift inside me. I had always believed that kindness was something small, something that could be easily overlooked. But what we had done, together, had created something that was far greater than I could have imagined. The warriors were not just here to defend my land. They had become my family, my community, and in return, I had become a part of theirs. As night fell and the stars emerged, I sat by the fire with Takoda and the other warriors. We shared stories of our lives, of the challenges we had faced, and of the bonds that had brought us together. I realized then that what had started as a small act of kindness had become a story of its own, one that would be told for generations. Takoda turned to me as the firelight flickered in his eyes. "You have given us more than just shelter, Eliza," he said softly. "You have given us hope." His words touched me more deeply than I could express. Hope. That was something I hadn't realized I had been missing. But in the company of these warriors, in the warmth of their camp and the strength of their unity, I found it. I found the courage to face whatever might come next. And I knew that, together, we could overcome anything. I woke up the next morning to a sight that took my breath away. The snow had melted slightly overnight, revealing a blanket of fresh grass and soft earth beneath. The warriors had been working tirelessly the day before, not only to fortify the camp, but to help me prepare the land for the planting season. My small ranch, once an isolated and quiet place, now felt alive with activity and purpose. I could hear the warriors singing as they worked, their voices rising in unison as they chopped wood, repaired the fences, and set up more permanent structures. It was as if the land itself was waking up, responding to the energy they brought with them. Takoda, as always, was at the center of it all, his calm presence a steady anchor for the others. He moved among the warriors with ease, offering guidance and wisdom when needed, but never commanding. His respect for his people was clear, and they, in turn, respected him deeply. It wasn't just his leadership that made him stand out. It was the way he treated everyone as equals, regardless of their role or status. As I walked through the camp, one of the younger warriors, a man named Jano, approached me with a smile. "Eliza," he said, "I've been asked to help you with the animals today. We've noticed how well you care for them." His words were simple, but they carried a deep sense of respect. I smiled back, feeling a warmth spread through me at his kindness. It was strange how quickly I had adapted to this new life, this new community. Not long ago, I had been a solitary woman living alone with only the land to keep me company. Now, I had a family, one that was built on mutual respect, kindness, and strength. We worked side by side that morning, tending to the horses and cattle. Jano showed me how to make the animals feel more at ease around the warriors, using soft words and slow movements. It was a skill I had never learned, but one that seemed to come naturally to him. As the day went on, I found myself surrounded by more and more warriors, each one offering their assistance in their own way. Some worked on the fences, while others began to clear the fields for planting. It was clear that they were not just here to protect me. They were here to help me build something greater, something that could not be achieved alone. The sun was high in the sky when Takoda called for a meeting. The warriors gathered around him, their faces serious as he spoke. "We have received word of danger," he said, his voice steady and commanding. "A group of men from the nearby town are planning to take the land from Eliza. They will try to claim it as their own, and we will not let that happen." The air grew still as his words sank in. I had known there were people who might want my land, but hearing it spoken aloud made the threat feel real, tangible. Takoda continued, "We will stand together. We will defend this land, and we will defend Eliza, because she has given us something rare, kindness in a world that has forgotten how to be kind." His words struck deep, and for the first time, I understood the weight of what was happening. This was not just about me. It was about all of us, standing together against those who would try to take what we had built. The warriors nodded in unison, their faces set with determination. It was then that I realized just how much I had become a part of this community, this family. Their fight was now my fight, and my fight was theirs. As the meeting ended, Takoda turned to me, his expression softening. "You have shown us what true strength is," he said quietly, "and we will protect you, as you have protected us." I felt a lump form in my throat at his words. I had done nothing more than offer shelter to a wounded man, and yet, here I was, surrounded by warriors who would fight for me, who would protect me with their lives. It was a humbling feeling, and one that I would carry with me for the rest of my life. The days that followed were filled with preparations for the coming conflict. The warriors worked tirelessly, setting up defenses and training, while I did my part by making sure the animals were well fed and the land was ready for planting. We all knew that the time for action would come soon, but we also knew that we were ready. We had something stronger than fear. We had each other. I stood at the edge of the field, watching as the warriors continued to prepare for the coming conflict. The camp was alive with activity, but a quiet tension hung in the air. The warriors knew that soon, their skills and strength would be tested. I could feel it too, deep in my bones. It was hard to imagine that just a few weeks ago, my life had been so different, quiet, isolated, and peaceful. Now, I was part of something much larger, something that had the power to change everything. I had given shelter to a wounded man, and in return, I had found myself surrounded by a tribe, a family, willing to protect me at all costs. Takoda's words echoed in my mind, the promise he had made to me, to protect my land, my home. But as the days passed, I found myself growing restless. We were preparing for something, but what? Who would come to take my land? What would happen when the fight came? Takoda, sensing my unease, approached me one afternoon as the sun began to set. His presence was calming, steady, like the earth beneath our feet. "Eliza," he said quietly, his deep voice carrying the weight of unspoken truths. "You are afraid." I looked up at him, the question in my eyes. How did he know? But I didn't need to ask. He already knew. "It is natural to fear what is unknown," he continued, his eyes searching mine. "But you are not alone in this. We are here, and we will fight for you, for your land, because we believe in what you have given us." His words settled into my heart like a warm fire, pushing away the cold fear that had settled there. I had been afraid, yes, but I was no longer alone. And together, we could face whatever came. The next day, Takoda gathered the warriors for one final meeting. The air was thick with anticipation as they sat in a circle around the fire, their faces illuminated by the flames. I joined them, feeling a strange sense of belonging as I sat beside Takoda. He looked around the circle, his gaze steady and commanding. "The time has come," he said. "We will stand our ground. The men from the town will come, but they will not take what is ours. We will defend this land, and we will defend Eliza, because she is now one of us." The warriors nodded in unison, their faces set with determination. I could feel the strength in their presence, and it gave me courage. This was not just my fight anymore. It was theirs too. As the meeting ended, I stood to leave, but Takoda's voice stopped me. "Eliza," he said, his tone softer now, "I want you to know that no matter what happens, you have done more for us than you can imagine. Your kindness has brought us together. And together, we will protect everything you hold dear." His words filled me with a warmth I couldn't explain. It was as though the weight of the world had been lifted from my shoulders, and I understood, in that moment, that we were more than just a group of people thrown together by circumstance. We were a family. We had formed a bond that could not be broken. As the warriors prepared for battle, I spent the rest of the day with them, helping where I could. There was little I could do in terms of fighting, but I offered food and water to those who needed it, making sure that the warriors were nourished and ready. The sky began to darken, and I could feel the tension rise in the air. It was coming. The men from the town were getting closer. But as I looked out at the camp, at the warriors who had become my family, I felt a sense of calm wash over me. We were ready. As the night fell and the stars lit up the sky, Takoda came to find me. "It's time," he said simply. We walked to the edge of the camp together, standing in silence for a moment. The wind was calm, but the air was thick with anticipation. I looked out across the land that had once felt like mine, and now felt like something much larger. This land, this life, was no longer just about me. It was about all of us. And as the sounds of approaching horses filled the air, I knew, deep in my heart, that we were ready. We would face whatever came with strength, with honor, and with the power of our unity. And no matter what happened, we would stand together. The first sound I heard was the thunder of hooves, echoing across the land like a warning. It was a sound I had come to recognize, a sound that meant change was coming, and with it, danger. The warriors gathered, standing tall and ready, their faces grim but resolute. I stood among them, my heart pounding, unsure of what would happen next, but certain of one thing. We were ready. Takoda stood at the front, his presence commanding and calm, a steady rock in the midst of the storm. His voice rang out, clear and strong. "Today, we fight not just for the land, but for our future, for everything we have built together. I looked around at the warriors, each one prepared for what was to come. Some were armed with rifles, others with bows, and many carried knives that had been passed down through generations. The women stood at the edges of the camp, their eyes watching us with quiet strength, ready to offer support however they could. The men from the town had arrived. I could see them in the distance, riding toward us on horseback, their faces set with determination, but there was no fear in their eyes. They had come to take what they believed was theirs, and they would not leave without a fight. As they neared the camp, Takoda stepped forward, his gaze fixed on the approaching men. "You will not have this land," he said, his voice steady and unwavering. "It is not for you to claim." The leader of the group, a man I recognized from the town, sneered as he dismounted. "This land belongs to the law," he said, his voice dripping with arrogance. "And the law says it belongs to us." Takoda's expression remained calm, but there was a fire in his eyes that I had come to respect. "The law does not own the land," he replied, his voice low but full of authority. "The people who live here, who work this land, are the ones who have a claim, and we will defend it." The two groups stood facing each other, the tension thick in the air. It was clear that neither side was willing to back down, but I felt a sense of pride well up inside me. This was more than just a fight for land. It was a fight for what was right, for honor, for the strength of community. The leader of the town men, clearly growing frustrated, drew his pistol, his hand shaking with the weight of the moment. "We will take this land by force if we must," he said, his voice harsh. The air seemed to freeze, and for a moment, everything was still. Takoda did not flinch. His warriors stood ready, their eyes locked on the enemy, their weapons at the ready. I could feel the weight of the moment, the impending clash between two worlds, two ways of life. But just as the tension seemed unbearable, a voice called out from behind the men of the town. It was a voice I recognized, one of the women from the town, someone who had always shown kindness when I visited. "Stop," she cried, her voice filled with urgency. The men of the town turned, surprised, as she rode toward them. "This is not the way," she said, her eyes wide with fear. "This land has been fought for, worked for, by these people. They have earned their place here." Her words hung in the air, soft but powerful, like a ripple across the surface of water. The leader of the town men hesitated, his eyes flicking between her and Takoda. There was a brief silence, a moment of doubt. Takoda stepped forward, his gaze unwavering. "The land belongs to the people who care for it," he said, his voice strong. "And we will not allow it to be taken from us." The men from the town looked at each other, uncertainty in their eyes. It was clear that the fight was not just about land. It was about something deeper, something more important. The woman from the town dismounted and stepped forward, standing between the two groups. "You cannot take what does not belong to you," she said, her voice steady but filled with emotion. The leader of the town men looked at her, then at Takoda, his face hardening. But after a long pause, he lowered his weapon. "This is not over," he muttered, his voice filled with resentment. "But for now, we will leave." The tension in the air slowly began to dissipate as the men from the town mounted their horses and began to retreat. As they rode away, Takoda turned to his warriors, his face calm but proud. "Today, we have won not with weapons, but with our unity, our honor," he said. "This land is ours, and we will protect it, together." I felt a surge of relief wash over me. We had stood our ground, not just because of the warriors' strength, but because of the strength we had found in each other. We had fought for something greater than land. We had fought for our right to live, to protect, to stand together. As the sun set on that day, I knew that we had changed something. We had proven that no matter how strong the enemy, no matter how great the challenge, we would always stand together, united in our strength and our resolve. The days that followed were filled with a strange mixture of relief and anticipation. We had won the battle for the land, but there was still a sense that the struggle was far from over. The warriors continued their work, fortifying our camp, and the atmosphere was charged with the quiet focus of those preparing for an uncertain future. I couldn't help but feel that the peace we had gained was fragile, like a thread that could snap at any moment. Takoda, as always, remained calm and steady, his leadership unwavering. He knew the battle for our land was not just a physical one. It was also a battle of wills, a test. of our strength as a community. As the warriors worked, I spent my days with them, learning more about their ways, their traditions, and their deep connection to the land. The lessons were not just about survival. They were about something deeper: honor, respect, and loyalty. The bonds between us had grown stronger, and with each passing day, I felt myself becoming more a part of the Apache way of life. But as the weeks went by, I noticed something shifting. The camp, which had once been filled with the sound of activity, now felt quieter, as if everyone was waiting for something. Takoda noticed this too. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, he called me to his tent. His expression was unreadable, but there was a quiet urgency in his eyes. "Eliza," he said, his voice steady, "there is a storm coming, and we must be prepared." His words sent a shiver down my spine. What storm? What had he seen that I had missed? He explained that the men from the town would not give up so easily. While they had retreated for now, their desire to claim the land was far from finished. They would return, and when they did, they would be ready for a fight. "They may come with more men," Takoda continued, his eyes locking onto mine, "but we will stand firm. We will not let them take what we have built together." I nodded, my resolve hardening. I had not come this far to let everything slip away. We had fought for this land, for our lives, and we would fight again if we had to. The next few days were filled with preparation. The warriors sharpened their weapons, checked their supplies, and made sure their horses were ready. We were ready for whatever was coming. As the tension mounted, I found myself reflecting on everything that had happened. Just months ago, I had been alone, struggling to maintain my small ranch, unsure of where my future lay. Now, I was surrounded by warriors, strong, proud, and loyal men and women who had become my family. I had learned what it meant to fight for something greater than yourself, to protect what you love, and to trust in those around you. But as the day of the anticipated return of the town's men drew closer, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. We were strong, we were united, but was it enough? Takoda seemed to sense my unease, and one evening, as we stood together at the edge of the camp, watching the sun set, he spoke. "Eliza," he said quietly, "there is something more we must do. It is not just about strength, but about heart. We must show them that we are not just fighting for land. We are fighting for something far greater." His words hung in the air, and I understood what he meant. This fight was not just about the physical land we stood on. It was about our way of life, our community, and our right to live freely. "We will show them who we are," Takoda said, his voice firm. "Not through violence, but through our unity. We will stand together, and when they come, they will see that they cannot break us." The warriors, hearing his words, gathered around, their faces filled with determination. It was then that I realized just how much we had become a family. We had forged something strong, something unbreakable. No matter what happened, we would face it together. The following morning, as the first light of dawn broke over the horizon, we gathered one last time. Takoda led us in a quiet moment of reflection, each of us standing together, ready to face whatever the future held. And as the sound of approaching hooves filled the air once more, I knew that we would stand firm, no matter what. We had each other. We had our land. And we would protect both with everything we had. The morning sun rose slowly over the horizon, painting the sky with hues of pink and gold. The air was crisp, the silence profound as the warriors and I stood together, watching the day begin. There was no turning back now. The time for waiting was over. As the sound of hooves approached, I felt my heart race, a mix of fear and anticipation building within me. The men from the town had returned, but this time, it was different. They came in greater numbers, their faces hard with resolve, but the energy among them seemed uncertain. Perhaps they thought that strength alone could win the day. But as they rode into view, they saw something that changed the course of the moment. Takoda stood tall at the forefront of our camp, his eyes steady and unwavering as he met the gaze of the town's leader. There was no shouting, no threats, just a deep, mutual understanding that this was not just a battle of force but a test of wills. The leader of the town's men pulled his horse to a halt. The warriors, with their stoic expressions, waited in perfect formation behind Takoda. The silence stretched, heavy with the weight of everything that had led to this moment. Then, the leader spoke, his voice rough but steady. "You really think you can stop us?" Takoda stepped forward, his voice calm, but carrying the power of 1,000 battles. "We are not here to fight for land alone," he said. "We are here to fight for the right to live, to protect what is ours, our people, our way of life. You will not take that from us." The words hung in the air like a challenge, one that the leader of the town's men could not ignore. For a long moment, the two men stood facing each other, the weight of their opposing worlds pressing down on both sides. Then, as if in slow motion, the town's leader lowered his gaze. The warriors behind him shifted uncomfortably in their saddles, some of them looking away, others standing firm. Takoda did not move, his posture unwavering. Finally, the leader spoke again, his voice quieter this time. "We came for what we thought was ours, but perhaps we were wrong." He glanced back at his men, his eyes scanning their faces. "We will not take what you have built, but we cannot promise that this will be the end of it." With those words, the tension in the air seemed to release, just slightly. The warriors behind Takoda relaxed their postures, but they did not lower their weapons. The leader of the town's men turned his horse around, signaling his men to follow him. They left slowly, each one casting a final look at us as they retreated. As the dust settled and the warriors stood down, Takoda turned to me. His eyes, as always, were full of calm certainty. "It is done," he said simply. I nodded, feeling a weight lift from my chest. The battle had been won, not with violence, but with strength, unity, and the undeniable power of standing firm for what we believed in. The land was still ours. The future, though uncertain, felt a little brighter. In the days that followed, life on the ranch began to return to a new normal. The warriors continued their work, fortifying the camp and maintaining the land. The women of the tribe helped me with the crops and the animals, their laughter filling the air as we worked side by side. We were building something strong together, something that would endure. Takoda stayed close, always present but never overbearing. His quiet leadership continued to guide us, and I found myself learning from him in ways I had never expected. One evening, as we sat by the fire, I asked him what would happen now. "Now," he said, "we continue. We protect what we have built, and we live with honor. This land is ours not just because we fought for it, but because we belong to it, and it belongs to us." His words resonated deep within me. We had not just won a fight for land. We had fought for a place in this world, for our right to live freely, to thrive together. And I knew that as long as we stood together, we could face whatever came next. The future was no longer something to fear. It was something to build, piece by piece, with the strength of our unity and the power of our kindness. And so, as the stars began to twinkle above us that night, I knew that we had forged something lasting, something that would not be easily broken. Our fight had been hard, but it had brought us closer together. And that, in the end, was what truly made us strong.